Hi, I'm David Haug, Superintendent of the Jefferson R-7 School District. It's been an honor for me to start this podcast and video series with some of our alumni and other things we're doing in the district. With this one in particular, Bradley Glass, as a parent, I want to stress that it's okay if your child doesn't know exactly what they want to do yet as a middle school student or as a high school student. Really, the power of this podcast lies in Bradley's process and his mental approach to things. I think it's so valuable. I encourage every parent and every student in this school district to watch this video, just because Bradley has such a unique approach to things. That is what everybody can benefit from. So again, I want to stress it's okay if they don't know what they want to do yet, the students, but they can always be working on that. That perseverance is the word I'm going to use with Bradley, and he was such a shining example of that here as a student and as a young adult. Hope you enjoy. Hey, I'm David Haug, Superintendent of Jefferson R-7, and I'm joined by a really special guest and somebody that's really been personal and close to us as one of our graduates, Bradley Glass. Bradley, thanks for joining us. Bradley's currently in the United States Naval Academy, and this was not something that happened overnight, and that's kind of the story we want to share today. I'm going to start with kind of the day that you found out. I think I kind of go back and help me here. You and Miss Runzi and I kind of knew, and we wanted to go surprise your mom.
Yes.
How awesome was that day?
It was a great experience. So I remember, like, very specifically, I was in weightlifting class, and I was in there, and I believe it was you called me down, and you're like, hey, like, you're going to get a phone call here soon. And I was like, oh, okay, like, I guess we're rolling with this. And so, sure enough, Congressman Smith gave me a phone call, and he said, would you like to go to the Naval Academy? And I was like, absolutely. And so then I know that, like, you were just ecstatic about it, and I mean I was almost in, like, disbelief.
Yeah.
Like, the emotions were running so high that they almost weren't running at all. And then we went down to Platten to surprise my mom.
Well, so I'm gonna back up here just a smidge,
Yeah.
okay? So
Okay.
we're like, so your mom has worked for the district for a long time as a kindergarten, and with just the utmost respect everybody has for your mom. And Miss Runzi and I were like, we want to go down and watch this, okay? So we follow you down. We go sit in the corner, and your mom walks in. She's looking at us, then she sees you, and kind of take it from there.
Yeah, and I think that as soon as she saw me and my, like, wicked grin, she kind of knew because it had been the culmination of a lot of time, a lot of hard work, and at that point, I was already into uh, the the military academy at West Point, but my ultimate goal was to make it into the Naval Academy. And so, whenever she saw that, I think she kind of knew that that goal had at that morning been achieved, and it was a crazy feeling.
I get a little choked up now thinking about it. So Miss Runzi and I went to the corner. We're taking pictures and video and all that. And I look over at her, and tears are just coming down our face. And we kind of said, "You're crying, I'm crying." That whole saying. And what a great day, because it's not just, I don't want to short circuit what others are doing to get into colleges, but it's a process.
Yes, it
It is
is.
truly a process. And before we get on that path as well, Representative Smith did note publicly at that time that you were the first one under his watch that actually got accepted to 2 academies. You got accepted to both the Army and the Navy, which is a tremendous compliment in itself. That doesn't happen overnight. This part of the podcast is really about for families and students that are looking to go this route or to do something. You can't just wake up one day and want to do it. And I'm going to segue back just a little bit. You were always a little bit ahead of the game, just in your communication with adults. You were also instrumental in us getting our Lego Robotics program up as 6th and 7th grader. Tell us a little bit about that summer when we did our first. We saw the video. We'll share it along with us.
Oh, wow. Yes, so the Lego Robotics was definitely a fun opportunity that Jefferson High School kind of presented myself and a group of individuals with, and it was something that I'd always kind of been interested in, the robotics side of it, but also the creativity and having something that most middle school and high school students are familiar with, being Legos. It's much easier to build a robot with something like that instead of just trying to go straight into like metal and screws and drills and all that stuff, which is A, more costlier, and B, like a little bit more unforgiving if you make a mistake with your
Sure.
design
Absolutely.
or encounter any engineering flaws. So the Lego side of it was very, it was a unique experience because we were kind of figuring out the code as we went, learning the computer part. We had different students.
Back in school.
We had different students were definitely more skilled in certain areas than others, but we were able to use that as a team to come up with who is the best builder, who is the best coder, who is the best at making a presentable engineering notebook to show in the competitions to the judges. And ultimately, we did end up competing as a team, and we didn't win the thing, which is kind of expected in your first year of competing in something like that. But we definitely had a lot of good takeaways from it, and it was something that I feel like students, I certainly did, can use to kind of harbor their engineering, their communication skills and interests, and really kind of take a step forward and figure out like what they want to do in terms of their further education.
And I'll go back to that point too. I know from our end, looking at the program, was you guys came in the summer for a couple years, but then it has really kind of exploded through our district, the STEM and everything, in different avenues. But you guys did become the first. I think it's sometimes difficult at a small school. You were in cross country, you were in band, you were in leadership stuff. So we couldn't, it was difficult for us to have a robotics team if we didn't embed it into the school day. So we actually had a 5th hour, like our 5th hour generally was kind of that time. We tried to butt it up against a lunch shift. So they had extra time to work in there, but to commit to doing that, but it also was 2 years out. You guys were kind of building that momentum. And so Bradley was kind of the first in that first group that did it, and also kind of on our first high school robotics team. And another story I'll share about Bradley is, I think you were in 7th grade, and there was some sort of event at the Fox Service Center, like a character thing. And
Yeah.
We just had the best time with Bradley, and he's so well spoken. You can already sense it. Like he's intelligent, but he speaks well, and he really just kind of commanded everybody's attention as a 7th grader at the table. I mean that sincerely. I smile because I have such vivid and great memories of that, but you've always kind of been on top of it. Do you remember what that was even? That's been a while.
Yes, yeah. It's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what was like talked about in some of those things.
I think you did make the decision we were going to Chick-fil-A after. I think we ran by Chick-fil-A and had a great meal. So, okay. So at what point did you feel like that the Naval Academy, a military academy, Army, was something in your future?
Yeah, I would definitely say that at the beginning of high school, I was bouncing around between multiple areas of service, really. So at first I was like, oh, I want to be an engineer and do this so that way I can help people. Oh, I want to be a doctor so I can do this. And I had like kind of thought about the idea, especially with Brendan Reese having gone before me and doing kind of the same things. And then he ended up at the Air Force Academy and is now doing great things in flight school. So I probably got serious about it the summer going into junior year because I was able to attend the Missouri Scholars Academy. And that was a very transformative experience with a lot of other like-minded individuals who really just like shaped the way that I write, the way that I think, and just brought me a bunch of new experiences. And there were a couple other guys there from different schools, some out towards like Columbia, Kansas City area, and some of them had already kind of committed to that, and they're like, yeah, you know, I want to go to like one of these service academies, and I kind of
Hopefully nobody's tardy.
I'd kind of thought about that after the program had concluded and going into junior year. I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this happen, and from there, kind of set out on my own of what do I need to do to get there,
Mhm.
and that's whenever you truly realize that it is a little daunting, but it's possible at the end of the day if you kind of just decide then and there, and you make it a goal.
I, there on your end, you were doing a ton. How important is it for the family, and I do this as a sort of promotion, to reach out to the school principal and counselor and say, this is something we're taking very seriously?
Oh yes, I think it's almost imperative that that happens. It's definitely a like multi-level effort in terms of getting there. I mean, it takes a lot on the student, but it also really helps to have a supportive, understanding family, as well as a high school, a guidance counselor, teachers, like this whole support network that you can rely off of, whether it's like recommendations, questions, uh, communication between some of these third parties that you have to deal with, whether it's like medical stuff, paperwork, like had to get certain items like stamped and approved from certain people that I never knew existed.
Yeah.
And doing that was kind of stressful in itself because I'd have to like run out to Hillsborough or something on like a random Tuesday and get something signed, and
Yeah.
it was just crazy, especially with just the timeline of it being also pretty quick as soon as you start it up.
Yeah, and I don't think it's really the school. What what I really comes down to, and Representative Smith's office, Donna Hickam specifically, for both of our uh, students have gone on to one of the academies, yourself and Brendan. They kind of take over and make sure they really do a great job of working with the families, and saying this is the path and the process that needs to be done. And then we also work with them to make sure they have everything that the student would need. Because this is not just simply like, I'm just going to throw my application in and see what happens. There's an extensive process to it.
Yes.
Um, and I just can't emphasize enough. And you were great. Brennan was great. This is, again, if you're serious about it, the earlier the better.
Hmm.
Even if it's just a thought your freshman year that, hey, I think put that on the school's radar, because you don't want to get, 2 weeks into your junior year or 2 weeks into your senior year specifically and say, I want to do that, when things that could have been, it just presents a better package to the academies, if that makes sense. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying you wouldn't be denied entering that late, but the earlier, the better, in my opinion, just so everybody knows what's expected. Because there are certain letters that have to be written and signed off on and notarized and all that good stuff. But we learned a lot through Brennan, so your process for us was much easier, and you made it easy. How important is the standardized test like an ACT in this part of the country that our students take? How important was that process, and how was that process for you?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely pretty important. And I feel like for a lot of schools is kind of gotten to be a little bit of a bigger deal. I was pretty fortunate in that I've always been naturally gifted at standardized test taking. But I still did have to study, and I'd say that that's the biggest thing. Whether you want to go down like the service academy route, or you're simply trying to get a scholarship at like a state school, a private school, or even get into something like the A+ program, and you need a certain score for that. Is
You're right.
whether you are or aren't a uh, naturally gifted standardized test taker, there are steps that you can take to definitely get better. And I mean, not everyone's going to get, a 34 or 36 or something crazy. But at the end of the day, you can definitely force yourself to see score improvements by simply getting one of the test books out there that provide problems and like step by steps on how to kind of get your mind in the zone of the standardized test. As well as there's a lot of free resources out there, and you just got to look for it. And I'd say that's the biggest thing for standardized testing is putting in the time. Like often people will get frustrated if they're not seeing these score increases, like maybe the second or third time that they've taken it. But if you sit down and you ask them, like, hey, being completely honest, like, how many hours per week did you put in for this? Did you even crack open like a practice test or things like that? And if the answer is no or not a lot, then the answer kind of reveals itself with that. But if you do put in the hours, even if it's not huge, I can almost like promise that
Yeah.
someone should see at least a little bit of a score increase. And depending on what your goal is, it just takes more and more time. And that's why I think, again, starting earlier is more beneficial because then you have that time.
Right.
If you need to take a second test and then see where you're at, and then take a third and just keep trying to climb.
Yeah, our data shows us that the earlier you take it, it's not even so much about the performance. It's just so the student can see the whole process, do it a couple times. So the third time, what I noticed by the time our ACT prep was really, I think, up and running about 2 years in, by the time those freshmen had taken a practice test and a sophomore, by the time they had juniors, I felt no stress in the building. The first year or two we gave it, you felt a lot of stress. It was just almost like, well, it's just another day, and we understand how to take the test. And our teachers do a great job putting that in their daily curriculum projects and everything they do. We take it very seriously. Not that we live and die by a test score, but in your case and a lot of other students, sometimes, for you, getting to service academy is a big deal. Sometimes a student getting from 23 to 24 so they can get an extra $2,000 a year in a scholarship. And I think that's where it really pays off if you look at that system. So thank you for sharing that. I will say this, I think I remember this, but you did have a backup plan in case the Naval Academy or the academies did not work out.
Yes.
I vaguely remember this being Missouri S&T or an engineering school. Was that kind of along those lines?
It was the University of Missouri. Was definitely there. I had applied for like the ROTC scholarships as well. So that was an option, and then simply just going off of the test scores and realizing that like the work to get there, had it not paid off, would have paid other dividends in terms of having like a near free state school experience, and something that would have allowed me to either reapply, pursue the ROTC route, or just simply find ways to pursue my interests in other areas that would have maybe been outside the military.
I love that. Like I said, Bradley was one of those exceptional that just kind of got the whole process. It wasn't like I'm going here and didn't have plan B. There was always like, in case this doesn't happen, in case this doesn't happen. I think that's so important because if you do there's no guarantees you're getting into an academy. And I think one thing is you do have to have that appointment by a state representative or a U.S. representative from the state of Missouri. In our case, I'm kind of stumbling around my words here, but you do have to have an appointment. You don't just apply and get in. There's a lot to it. But you did an amazing job of looking at the whole picture, and I really encourage our families and kids to do that. Another thing, I saw your mom, I guess it was yesterday, and we talked about you looking forward to coming in and doing the podcast and everything. And there's something that keeps kind of digging at me when I work with kids students that kind of hit those exceptional things, and that is the personal ownership in this. And your mom made the comment, I said, that was a tough process. She said, well, Bradley did everything. So I think kind of share your mindset of maybe not relying on others and doing that investigation.
Yes, I would say that the biggest thing a student can do, and I still do this now, like while I'm in school, is advocate for themselves. Like at the end of the day, like there will be this support network out there, but you have to find it. And so once you like have this idea, whether it's an academic pursuit or you have like a scholarship that you want to go for or a team that you want to go for, like it doesn't just have to be within school. But I feel like a lot of high schoolers get like so caught up in everything that's going on that they're always afraid of like hearing like no or like that like final like stop in the road. And in my opinion, you got to picture yourself driving a Jeep and going off road and around that roadblock. Like
Yeah.
you just got to keep going. You got to find a way. And so like whenever I like was setting these goals and stuff, I was like, okay, like here's the deadline for this. I want to try and have it done at least a week done, or at least done a week prior to that deadline. And how am I going to do that with the time that I have here? And just setting out these goals and stuff and planning it out and just one step at a time. Like at the end of the day, you just got to like, if you could see 1% of progress after the day was done, then you know that like you were one step closer to that. And I think that seeing that progress helps because there were some days where nothing would get done. Like you wouldn't get an answer back from someone that you needed an answer from. You maybe you were worried about a certain class that day and you had a big test and it just didn't go the way you wanted to. And that can be frustrating. But at the end of the day, if you advocate for yourself and you seek to find these answers and to find someone that's going to help you and to get things done, it's amazing how things, for the most part, go how you want them to go. And again, there are some things that are just up to chance, and
Yeah.
it may not happen the way exactly you see it happening. But at the end of the day, like you're gonna be so much further than you would have been had you just sat there and thought, like, I don't know if I can do this, or I just don't know how to do it. But if you seek that out and if you find a way, like you're often going to find yourself so much more mature, so much just in a better standing from where you started.
I'm going to not stop the podcast, but I want, if you're listening, you need to go back and listen to that again. That was unbelievable because that's really, we can talk about everything we offer to school, but if you have that internal drive, and again, I can't express enough. This is what I've seen in Bradley, and really Brendan Reese as well. Like just this whole process. It's not just, well, they do all these things, but the ownership there on your end was, and really that's what I've always believed about schools is that we have all these programs and stuff, but it doesn't guarantee success. The student has to own it.
Mhm.
So if you take a moment, go back and listen to that again. So I'm going to summarize what you just said. I love the word advocate for yourself, but also it's not just enough. Like sometimes we say don't quit, but you're talking about writing in those goals down, and whether it be a small goal and saying I accomplished this small goal today, my 1% towards the 100% I want to get to. If I may be paraphrasing there a little bit, but that you find victories almost every day,
Yes, yeah.
and even the failures. I love the part about it's okay to hear no every once in a while because that may not be really where you need to be doing. But I go back to your planning. If the academies didn't work out, I really felt like you had plan A, B, C, and I even part of that to hear you even had ROTC opportunities at a university to still kind of stay in line with that. I think that is a huge, that if we don't do anything else today and you're a parent or a child, you can go back and listen to that. That was absolutely phenomenal. Is there anything else? Large school versus small school. So we're a small school. You were involved. How important were those other activities? Band, cross country, student council leadership opportunities, robotics. How important is that?
I would say that the most important thing is to do things that you're like genuinely passionate about. And again, this is like beyond service academies. This goes for like any goal that you have. Is like filling up a resume with a bunch of just like fluff and activities that are really quite meaningless to like what you did and how you did. But just listing them, like that is not going to be beneficial for you as a person and you as an applicant to whatever it may be. But things like band, I genuinely enjoyed. We have such a good program here that like really harbored some of my interests and allowed me to be a leader, allowed me to express creativity and certain skills. Cross country kind of speaks for itself. You gotta like running, but I liked running, and it's definitely helped my fitness to where I'm at now, and things like fitness tests, and just genuinely enjoying like working out and having that drive to. I think you and a couple others mentioned seeing how much I've gotten a little bigger here too, because
Yeah.
I definitely had to.
Like you look like you take somebody out now.
Yeah, I definitely had to gain a little bit of weight and work out in like other areas too, besides just running and being skinny. But uh, just having those ways to pursue your fitness, pursue your health, pursue your interests. That's the biggest thing that I think you can look for in an extracurricular because not everybody's background is going to look the same in terms of
Yeah.
extracurriculars, and that's how it should be. If
Right.
you can speak to someone about what you're truly, genuinely interested in, and here's how you did in those things, like you're going to be so much more accomplished and well-rounded in terms of what you're doing and where you want to go, and I think that would help you the most.
I'm going to stop again here. The word passion, this is phenomenal. That was a great answer. And I think I'll go back to a time for me personally, and I'm hoping to summarize what you're saying, that I talked to somebody once early on in education, and he said, this gentleman was older in his career, had had a very distinguished, successful career. He said, when I was younger, people told me I'm going to burn myself out. He goes, this is my passion. He said, I feel like I've never worked a day in my life. This is what I want to do. And I think I'm sensing that from you. Do the activities, not about what you should be doing, but if you find what you're doing, that's when things really start to happen. That was a phenomenal answer. Again, you might want to go back and rewind that. Anything else we want to cover before we kind of segue a little bit into the military? And I will say the military discussion, military academy discussion for Bradley and I, he does have to be careful about what he says, and we just want to get that out there up front. So if he says I can't answer that, that's his duty. But I'm also trying to ask questions where he doesn't have to worry about that. So if I fail, I'll apologize right now. Okay.
You're okay.
So part of the process is that once you're accepted, and so the military experience is sort of like a 4-year college.
Yes.
Okay, so if you think about it like a college student, there's just the military attachment to it. However, before you go in the fall, you actually become a soldier in our military through basic training in the summer. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. It's in Annapolis, and it's the 7 weeks prior to the start of the school year. It's kind of like your indoctrination period, and it's a lot of fun. It's pretty hot. It's very hot in the summer, but it really kind of forges the bonds and the skills that you need to carry forward. In my experience, was pretty positive with it, and you learn so much about yourself in that time period, which is why I think I enjoyed it so much, because I already kind of thought that I knew who I was and like what I was about going into it, and then some of that changes, but then a lot of it strengthened going forwards, and I truly enjoyed it in terms of making me a better person and like prepared for what was to come.
So I'm going to segue a little bit back to the earlier conversation. It's no secret you've had an interest in engineering, and we talked, and so you can tell me kind of what your career path is looking at as far as like majors.
Yes, yeah.
So go ahead and tell me, because it is kind of an interesting combination of majors.
Yes. So at the end of the day, I'm taking a lot of engineering core classes, but I ultimately chose political science as my major, simply because I've always had a lot of passions in reading and writing as well. I know that while she was here, Miss Boyer really kind of helped some of my writing abilities, as well as like entering some of my works in competitions, and just really exploring like how to write, whether it's for a paper, whether it's creative writing and things like that. So whenever I was there, I kind of chose political science as a way to further that, but keep me interested in the real world, like what's going on around us, what's going to shape like our careers and things like that. And also the unique fact that by choosing a major like political science, English, history, some of those majors, we have to take language classes, and so I've chose German, which has been a lot of fun. I'm not the best at speaking it, but my reading and writing has definitely improved, especially since this past summer, one of my trainings was going to Munich for 3 weeks to study, and that was an awesome time, and which I really felt like I was fully immersed in the culture over there, as well as the ability to take classes every day and kind of further myself along with the language. So a great opportunity there. It's just a little weird being a political science major that has to take thermodynamics as well, and calculus 3 and some of these other courses, which were definitely a struggle. It's not easy, but it is nice knowing that in the classes that are related to my major, I've been able to perform well so far.
So if you're keeping track at home, political science major, engineering minor, and a German minor.
Yeah, not a true engineering minor, but
Okay, gotcha.
in terms of the whole core curriculum,
Lots
it
of
comes
engineering
out to
courses, yeah.
yes, yeah.
So how did your time at Jefferson prepare you for those engineering courses? And again, going back to being a self-advocate, you working with teachers to talk about the different types of writing
Hmm.
with your staff. That's self-advocacy and making sure you're putting yourself in a position to be successful. But in general, how did those type of courses here? We didn't have engineering, but we had
Hmm.
advanced math. We had the college credit program. Um, how did that prepare you for the Naval Academy?
Yes. So definitely trying to get on the highest math classes available to you is going to be pretty important. Because I took Calculus 1 uh, in my senior year here, and that allowed me to take Calculus 2 as soon as I came in from validating. Whether or not that was a good decision on my end, I am still unsure of. But it was definitely a challenge. But also taking AP Chemistry, AP Physics, because those are classes that you'll have to take as well. And I like personally enjoyed them, and I found that I probably had greater success than had I not taken them while I was here,
Okay.
because I had some of these foundational pieces of knowledge that I was able to take with me. Like obviously, the courses there you kind of expand upon what you learn in like the AP classes in high school,
Right.
but it does give you at least a problem solving set of base skills that you need, as well as like some of the general topics of getting through those like first semester classes there, that you can take with you and hopefully find a lot of academic success.
Yeah, and I think some of that too is just the rigor.
Yes. Yeah.
Just not overdoing it, but doing it to a point where you're capable of handling it and understand that, I think at different times, it's again going back to it's okay to, I don't want to use the word fail
Yes.
or be told no. That maybe okay, no, instead of saying, well, I just can't do that. I mean, you're already performing at a certain level. Maybe to get to the next level, you struggle, but then how do
Hmm.
you find a way to keep moving? And I think Bradley gets it. Obviously, he's able to convey that, but I think your record speaks for itself, kind of where you are, and you can't do that without having some perseverance in there,
Hmm.
for sure. Um, so, in general, like we all have, we all leave something and go to something else, whether it be high school to college, whether it be from college to a job, from one job to the next job, and we have sort of these thoughts about what the experience is going to be like or what it's going to take to be successful. In a general summary, was the naval experience what you thought it was going to be? Was it harder? Kind of, if you kind of lay that out, just in generalities.
Yes, I would say that it's definitely kind of what I expected. It was a little hard to tell without being able to visit because of COVID and things like that. But with like my background research and all the preparation going into it, as well as like everything that I did here, um, I think I was prepared for everything that was going to be thrown at me. And as you mentioned, I didn't do everything perfectly. There, especially my freshman year, was definitely a little bit of a struggle, just trying to figure everything out, because there's just so much like new and things that I didn't have the time to prepare background information for. But by preparing for it as much as I could while here, I knew that like any single task could be accomplished. It was just like whenever you threw them together, then it gets a little hard of figuring out like which one needs to come first,
Hmm.
which one needs to have the most priority. And I would say prioritization was the one thing that was the hardest to prepare for, simply because there is a lot of unknowns in terms of like what you're doing and what tomorrow's going to look like. But once you figure that out and you like build that like schedule in your mind, then for me it was a lot easier. And that's whenever I truly felt like I had traction on the ground underneath me. And then
Sure,
from there, it's just charging forwards.
sure. So I'm going to ask this a certain way. Do you feel like the greatest challenge for you in your life? Because I think there are some things that came naturally easy to use for our school and things like that. Do you think it was handling adversity?
Uh, yes, I would say so. There's whenever those challenges come, like it's important uh, to no matter how big they are and how like scared you are of like, oh man, like if I don't get this done, like there's gonna be some like pretty big consequences. Uh, just again, going back to like that first part is like you gotta just advocate for yourself and figure it out, and then trust in the end that like if you think about it as a sole individual thing, like it can be done. And then it's just going from there. And yeah, my freshman year, like I definitely did have some of those academic struggles, and simply trying to balance like uh, four things with three hands. But like whenever I figured that out, it was so much better and has really allowed me to kind of appreciate how far I've grown because of that.
That's awesome. So I'm going to set this next question up, okay? We talk about the adversity of getting into the Naval Academy once you're there and trying to figure things out. Engineering degree, lots of engineering. Oh, I'm sorry, political science degree,
Yeah.
lots of engineering, German, and somehow you're now on the crew team,
Yes.
rowing team. I don't remember a rowing team here at Jefferson out in Platte Creek or on the Mississippi or anything. Bradley, how did all this come about? Tell us about that experience, because it is true. You're on a varsity sport
Yes.
at a university.
Yes.
Whether it's Naval Academy or not, you're a varsity athlete.
Yes.
I kind of sit here and I talk to your mom enough, and you send me a text every once in a while, and I'm like, okay, cool. But you start to think about the whole package you're putting together here. How did that come about?
Yeah, so this was like before I even got there. There was an email about it, and it was kind of talking about like the team has a big walk-on culture, which is pretty awesome. Uh, and so I saw the email, and I was like, you know what, like I obviously don't have the size and the strength to be a rower, but like this whole coxswain thing is pretty cool. And for most people that are, if you have just a vague idea of what like rowing is, I guess for the viewers out there, like the coxswain is the normally smaller man or woman that sits in the stern or the back of the boat and is doing like the steering, the calls for technique, and in a general race is like trying to out strategize the other crews that are
Wow.
around them to win the race, whether it's a straight shot 2,000-meter sprint race or it's a head race on a river in the fall that involves like turns and things like that. So I kind of thought about it, and I was like, you know what, like I might as well fully embrace this whole thing of just kind of jumping into something new. So I did it that summer and stuck with it. And my freshman year didn't get to see any race time, but I really stuck with it. I just love the team and the dynamic of the guys. Like everyone shows up every single day and wants to work hard. It's a break from school. It's a break from like all of our activities, and like we all just love it so much. Like uh, the team calls it the brotherhood, and I mean that's truly what it is. And like whenever you look at like our alumni and like what guys, whether it's 1 year after graduation are doing, or like guys that are 20 years out of graduation are doing, like everyone comes back to like their days and their hours spent on the Severn River, just getting after it. And this year I finally got to, or this fall, was great in terms of races. I got to compete at the Head of the Charles Regatta, which is up in Boston, and it's probably like one of the biggest rowing-related events besides the Henley Royal Regatta, which is in the United Kingdom, and then obviously like Olympic and national level competitions. But we were fortunate enough in my boat to get a second place medal in the division that we were competing in, and it was just a crazy feeling, like passing some of these crews in a race where we weren't expected to pass anyone.
Yeah.
And the crowd, like there was thousands of people lined along like the Elliott Bridge, the Weeks Bridge up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and just having all these like these fans surrounding the race course as we're going down, and the race just went perfectly to plan. Like those are the feelings that like whenever you train for hours on end every single day and then you finally get like one race like that. It's just like the best feeling ever in terms of what you
You're really building some momentum there
yeah,
too.
yeah, what you accomplish with your friends, and kind of like what the sport is all about, because uh, like no crew is ever going to have a race that is truly like 100% perfect, but it's the fact that you try and chase that feeling, and for some people that would drive them insane. But maybe I'm insane for thinking that that's like super exciting, and that's why I've stuck with it and just love it so much.
So 2 questions based on what you just gave me. I hope mom and dad will let you sleep over the break here some. My goodness. That's an order from the superintendent to make sure he gets some rest. How many hours a week are you spending on this, season? Like, you've got everything going on at the Naval Academy. It's not just being a student. There's things related to becoming an officer. There's all these things going on. How much time are you spending? Like, I played college football. I knew kind of my schedule all week. What are you talking?
Probably
Just an average week. How many hours?
Probably 20 hours of official practice.
Wow.
And then there's like a lot of stuff that kind of goes on behind the scenes of like waking up to like walk out to the boathouse. For me, like studying like some of these like crews and the courses and things like that. But oftentimes like it adds time out of the day, but for me, I really appreciate it because it does kind of take away from like if I have a lot of other duties that I need to do. As soon as I touch anything that's related to the boathouse, like all that stuff kind of goes out the window, and I clear my head, and it's kind of like a nice safe space to allow me to like perform and still get like workouts in because I got to stay fit, so that way I don't weigh too much in the boat and hinder the boat's speed. But it all around, it kind of just like I feel like it makes me like whole and complete
Yeah.
there. It was like that part that was missing, and I didn't really know it was gonna happen. Like if you would have asked me freshman year here, like, oh, you're gonna be a coxswain for the heavyweight crew team, and be like, what's that and why? Why? But
Like I
but
said,
now,
I don't remember anything out in Platten Creek. So.
yeah, yeah. But now that it's happened, it's like I almost like can't picture myself without it. Like it's just
That's awesome.
it's such an awesome experience with a bunch of great guys.
So just one question. We'll move on from this. But how much time? I mean, how much time do you spend on strategy? Is that something your coaches sit down and say?
Yes, yeah, we have meetings together, and it kind of just varies by the week in the race. In the spring, it's a little bit more straightforward since there's no turns. It's just 2,000 meters down a course. In the fall, though, especially like that one up in Boston, like that race has a lot of like some crazy turns. And so it was mapping out like using drone images and
Wow.
YouTube videos and all this
kinda
different
wondered.
stuff of like I was at a point where like I'm pretty sure one night I dreamed about it. Like it was crazy of like I could like see the course just based off of like online imagery, and I had like never even touched the water. And then as soon as like we were there the day before for a practice run, I was like, oh yeah, well this is the tree that I noticed that I need to take my turn
Wow.
here, and going through this bridge, I need to be like this far away from it, and things like that.
And one last question: how many rowers are on the actual boat itself?
If for most of our races they're in eights, so there's 8 rowers, but we also do enter some fours at races where the coxswain sits at the front of the shell, and then there are 4 rowers behind. Which that in itself is a little different because you're in the front, you can see better, but you can't see the guys.
Yeah.
So it's a little harder to identify if there's problems happening because you can't see it. You have to go based off of feel and like what you feel the shell doing underneath you.
I could just picture you on that boat and kind of going back to that day at Fox, just how you kind of commanded the table. I could really see you commanding that bell that just rang. No, I'm just kidding. Commanding the team. I could just see it. So that's awesome. I'm glad we talked. If we could talk just about that, probably in a whole podcast. All right. Part of the experience of going to the Naval Academy, you had an engineering, you kind of changed a little bit to political science, still doing, we've talked about that enough, but without going to specifics, do you get sort of this like taste of everything the Navy has to offer?
Yes.
Like to kind of like picking a career path?
Yes, yeah. That's kind of what our summers are for, and everybody's summer is different. And there are some things that every person will do the same of, but each summer, like my experiences have been able to provide me with opportunities to kind of see what all's out there, so that way I can make the most informed decision of what I want to do in terms of my career. Um, and I have to decide next fall, next August, whenever I get back, which I'm still thinking about putting in a little bit more time. Uh, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of options out there for all midshipmen that are there, and I personally, that's kind of like why I chose to do this, because I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted, but I knew that like there was something out there for me. And
Yeah.
now, like going into my sixth semester, I feel like I've been presented with a lot of opportunities, and met a lot of cool people that have kind of informed me to hopefully make the best preferences that I can, and then fingers crossed, getting what
Yeah.
I want come November of next year, so that way I can be the best naval officer that I can be.
So I can say this, and I'm gonna ask you to answer it, but if you think about it, like the naval branch of our military is a complex branch, and I'm trying to simplify this. You have, you know, submarines
Yes.
going one direction down into the water. You have massive battleships and aircraft carriers, and you also have the aviation part of it too. So the Navy is extremely broad. It's neat that you're a part of that and get to see some of that stuff that goes on, even if it's not a path you're going in. It's got to be pretty impressive.
Hmm.
Um, all right, just a couple weeks ago, you had the Army Navy game. What's that experience like?
Oh, it's awesome.
Kind of walk us through that day because you guys, I'm speculating here and just stuff you see on TV. You guys are getting in buses. You're driving to like Philadelphia or New Jersey to watch a game, but
Yes.
it's the Army Navy game.
Yes, yeah, it's a game that has everyone excited all year. I personally always look forward to it, and no matter like, it's one of those games where like everyone just gets so excited for it because the winner's always pretty unknown, simply because of such like a deep rooted rivalry, that anything goes, and it's pretty awesome. And this year it was up in Boston, so myself and a couple of my teammates and buddies were all able to drive up for the game, and just kind of explore. Like I'd never been to Boston before, so it's pretty cool to just see all of the fans in the community just come together, and this even the city itself embracing um, like what was going on up there. And I had like so much fun with it, and it was just a really great time. And every year it is, and I'm also pretty excited because next year for senior year, my I think my parents are going to come out and
That's
go to the
awesome.
game. So I feel like
Where's it next year?
I think it's in DC.
DC.
Yes.
Gotcha. When you were in Boston, did you go to like the the old church tower where Paul Revere did his ride?
Uh, I don't know if we went to that exact church, but we definitely did a little bit of sightseeing while we could. We got to see kind of like the more historic district, the city hall. We went down to like the harbor and things like that too,
I
and
I
it
was
was
there one
also
time.
it was cool with all the Christmas lights up too.
Oh, I bet. I will say this about Boston. You hear about the ride of Paul Revere and you talk about the lights and the lanterns in the church steeple. So I went, then I took what they call like a water taxi back across the harbor.
Oh yes.
Okay. It was cool. So you're over here in this old town and you see the massive, what's Boston.
Hmm.
And you look back and you're like, that is the highest object that Paul Revere could have put the lights in back at that time, and it's still kind of preserved there.
Hmm.
It was just kind of neat. I enjoyed it. That had to be a great experience. Um, is there anything else um, as far as what you can share about your experience at the academy? Um, it's either just kind of cool or something that maybe we wouldn't think about.
Yes, I would say that I just enjoy the fact that like every day is like kind of the same but also different, and it's kind of nice like having I personally enjoy having a uh, more fixed schedule. It just kind of helps how my brain's like wired, and it really just like helps going back to like achieving something little every single day and looking back and saying like, okay, like I did this today and I need to do this tomorrow and just keep going. I'm very kind of like goal driven, which is like probably evident based off of like other things I've
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
Um, but it's nice like living with like all your classmates in like such a close proximity. Because I always know that like at the end of the day, like if I didn't have like the best day, and if like I took like a hard test or like I just have to do something, or someone came to me with a problem that is now my problem that I have to try and fix, uh, like I have like some of my best friends in the room right there, and they're dealing with the same thing, and uh, just embracing that camaraderie that we have with each other of like, okay, like here's what we got to figure out, and then you kind of put your heads together, and it's just an awesome time. And I enjoy every single day, no matter like how difficult it is, simply because of that is I know that at the end of the day there's like this like larger puzzle that's being solved, and just trying to get one day closer to
Absolutely.
graduation.
This has been great. Um, I'm going to end this portion. If we come back with something else, great. But Bradley, this has been phenomenal. I think that anybody listening to this today, we've always been impressed, with kind of not only how you treat others, you conduct yourself, that whole gamut, but to hear it more in depth has been certainly appreciated by you coming in. And again, I'm going to market this with our community that if you've got a child or just even an adult, this is one you need to listen to because of kind of your mindset of perseverance and everything that you can just keep doing even if it doesn't look like the clear path is in front of you is working out. So thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Um, it was an honor to have you as a student, your whole class. That's the one thing I do kind of miss stepping out as the principal is this type of stuff because we had those meetings at times, and there's sort of this part of me too, like as a principal, like wanting to make sure that I'll go back to Brendan for just a second. I felt like if Brendan didn't get into an academy, we were doing something wrong. That kid was outstanding.
Hmm.
And um, the fact that he got through, I was like, okay, we're on to something here. Um, and I completely understand that schools do things to a certain point, and really families and kids, there has to be buy-in on that end that
Hmm.
it's going to work, and then kind of look at the school like what can I get from the school to get me where I want to be. It's kind of how I think it is. Schools really should not be the ones getting kids to a naval academy. They should be the ones providing the process and that rigor wherever we could. Either it's a robotics program or taking advanced math courses, trying to provide that rigor. But I kind of go back to that whole deal where, man, it's just it's so neat to sit in these meetings back when we had those meetings and think where we are today. And this has been awesome. And I will make sure that this gets sent, and we'll make sure our kids get a chance to see it. But great job.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming too. We're gonna go eat. You can't eat. I guess you can't eat extra gravy and stuff because you can't gain too much weight. But hopefully you get to eat a few meals and get some rest.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.